They thought you were empty, but heaven knew you were just being stripped. Stripped of false crowns, stripped of counterfeit connections, stripped of status that man gave you, so God could crown you in silence. This wasn't just loss, it was transfer. What looked like betrayal was actually a revealing. The robe they tore off you was never royal. The doors that shut weren't rejection, they were seals, so only the divine ones could enter. Because heaven doesn't give crowns in public, it crowns in caves, in heartbreak, in isolation, in silence so loud, only your tears could interpret it. You were crowned the moment you lost what they worship. And now, the shift is here, because authority is never announced. It's felt, and they feel you now. Rooms shift when you enter. Eyes drop when you speak. The proud flinch, the fake scatter, and you're not even trying. This isn't charisma. This is rank. Spiritual rank that can't be bought, earned, or imitated. You intimidate without speaking, because heaven already declared, this one is marked. And what's wild is, your hands haven't even touched the money yet, but the wealth is coming. Why? Because creation responds to order. Because resources follow rulership, not rulers in gold, rulers in spirit, rulers with clean hands. Not perfect hands, but consecrated hands. Because in this kingdom, you don't chase wealth. You command it. You don't hustle. You host glory. You don't beg. You build. And it starts in the unseen. Prophetic downloads, Zodan insights, divine blueprints that hit you like thunder in the night. And they're not just ideas. They're currency, kingdom currency, spiritual wealth, assignments from the Most High. This week, your hands touch something, but not just coins. They touch keys. Keys to cycles, keys to freedom, keys to a mantle. Because this isn't just wealth to bless you. It's wealth to break chains. Your hands are dangerous now. Your hands are holy now. Your hands are charged. And demons know it. That's why they stirred last night. That's why the warfare increased. That's why the jealousy came out of nowhere. Not because of the bag, but because of your backbone. Not because you're rich, but because you're righteous. And that's the wealth that terrifies darkness. So listen carefully. That touch this week, it may not look like a wire transfer. It may come as a sudden dream, a divina conversation, a door you didn't knock on, but opens anyway. Because mantles don't need introductions. They make room. And heaven is saying, the mantle just landed. Now watch the money follow. You thought God was taking too long. But what you called delay was actually development. The promise didn't disappear. It was being disguised. In waiting, in warfare, in stillness that trained your spirit to SCE before you touch. Heaven wasn't withholding wealth. It was withholding premature exposure. Because what you were praying for would have crushed you had it come too early. God doesn't waste blessings on identities still under construction. He builds the vessel before pouring out the oil. That no you heard months ago, it wasn't rejection. It was protection. You didn't lose the opportunity. It was rerouted from the hands of those who would have drained you, used you, diluted your anointing to feed their platform. Some doors closed because God saw the predators behind them before you did. And now, you're not just ready, you're equipped. Because real wealth isn't released by clocks. It's released by kairos, divine timing, not chronos, not your planner, not your 5-year goal, but the moment heaven says, now. And for you, that now just touched the earth. It wasn't delayed. It was being aligned with your calling, with your consecration, with your character. Your breakthrough had to wait for your rank to catch up. You were asking for overflow, but hadn't passed the trust test. You wanted favor before you passed spiritual fidelity. Now that your yes is rooted, your wealth can flow because God funds assignment, not ambition, not ego, not entertainment. And make no mistake, there were battles behind the veil. Like Daniel, your answers were released, but intercepted. Forces of darkness tried to embargo your blessing, tried to delay the angelic couriers sent to deliver what your fasting unlocked. You didn't feel the war, but your spirit bruised for it. And now, it's over. What held you back has been dismantled. Altars broken, bloodline curses burned. Witchcraft webs cut and cast down. That's why you feel lighter today. That's why your hands tingle, because they're finally free to receive. You thought you were being punished, but God was removing the counterfeit offers. That contract, that connection, that comfortable trap, it wasn't a blessing. It was a cage, decorated in gold, but designed to shrink you. So God delayed the yes, to expose every imposter. And while you waited, you were being forged. Now, when the wealth comes, you won't blow it on validation. You'll build with it. You'll heal with it. You'll free others with it. Because now, you don't just want to be rich. You want to be righteous. And heaven funds the righteous, because they build what lasts. God couldn't release it until he handed you the blueprint. Vision before provision. Order before overflow. Blueprint before the bag. And now you have it. The divine instruction. The burden that won't let you sleep. The clarity that makes you weep. This is why the check is clearing. Why the contract is coming back. Why the door that ghosted you is knocking again. Because now, your foundation is firm. And the kingdom can trust you with what others would have wasted. The wealth is not late. It's right on prophetic time. Because every delay had a purpose. And now, that purpose is being funded every time you feel it. That pressure, that fire, that hum in your palms. It's not a side effect. It's a sing, because you didn't just shift assignments. You crossed into a new realm, and every realm requires clearance. This isn't a promotion. It's a deployment. You've entered spiritual territory. Your bloodline never touched. Territory your ancestors dreamed of, but died before they could reach. That's why it feels so intense. That's why your hands are trembling at midnight. Because heaven is outfitting you for a new impact. You're not just carrying prayers now. You're carrying weapons. Your hands are being calibrated to dismantle ancient systems and disrupt demonic infrastructure. This is why the oil feels heavier. This is why your dreams feel louder. This is why people look at you and flinch. You didn't just level up. You became a threat. God never sends you into a new battle with old tools. So the tingling you feel, that's heaven installing upgrades. Your old grace got you through survival. But this new grace is designed for dominion. You're not just a witness anymore. You're a presentative. Your words carry prophetic weight. Your decrees disturb hell's algorithms. And now, your hands must align with your mouth, because you don't just speak change. You touch it into motion. And yes, this new access comes with a warning. Because not all are cleared to operate at this level. But you were cleared in silence. You were tested in storms. And now, your hands carry proof that you've been authorized. God didn't mark you for applause. He marked you for access, to go where others can't, to build what others won't. This wealth, it's not for your ego. It's for your assignment. This isn't compensation. It's construction funding. Heaven's treasury has released the blueprints. And now, the resources are catching up. But don't be surprised when enemies increase, when warfare intensifies, because with new assignment comes multiplied resistance. But hear this, your angelic reinforcements have multiplied too. Every pulse in your hand is a reminder, you are not alone. You are escorted by fire. So yes, you felt isolated, abandoned even. But what looked like absence was actually activation. Heaven needed the noise gone, so you could feel the fire rising in your hands. Because what you're carrying now can't be tossed around. It must be held, with fear, with trembling, with reverence. This next move isn't loud, it's heavy, and your spirit knows it. Your bones feel it. Your hands, they carry the weight. You're not just anointed to build. You're authorized to break. Your touch disturbs darkness. Your presence agitates demons. That's why they react. That's why some flee before you even speak. Because your hands are no longer hands. They are altars. They are triggers. They are conduits of heaven's will. So when you stretch them forth this week, know this. You're not just touching wealth. You're touching destiny. And destiny is about to respond. You thought no one saw. You thought the silence meant failure. But the silence was your test. You weren't forgotten. You were being measured, not by men, but by heaven. Because every time you stood in the hallway with no open doors, heaven was counting. Every time you showed up to bless, when you had nothing left to give, it was recorded in realms unseen. This wasn't punishment. It was proof. Proof that your loyalty wasn't for sale. Proof that your hands stayed clean. When every shortcut tried to stain them, you passed the no recognition test. You kept building when no one clapped. Kept sowing when no one returned the favor. Kept showing up when the applause dried up. Others would have stopped. But you didn't. You didn't crumble under silence. You didn't sell your soul for attention. You didn't quit when the crowd left. And that's why you're qualified now. Not just to receive, but to command. God tested your motives by letting people ignore your value. And you passed, because your worth was never tied to their praise. You passed the loyalty under pressure test. You turned down the fast money. You rejected the shady deals. You walked away from circles where your soul would have died slowly. And heaven said, this one is safe to bless, not just with wealth, but with influence, with responsibility, with spiritual jurisdiction, because what's coming isn't just income, it's impact. You passed the hidden forgiveness test. You released them, the ones who ghosted, lied, betrayed, borrowed, and never repaid. And even when you could have exposed them, you didn't. You chose mercy. You chose silence. You chose freedom. That forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was warfare, because bitterness is a thief, and you refused to let it rob your harvest. You forgave. The gate just opened. You passed the contentment test, where the fridge was light, the inbox was quiet, and your name wasn't in any rooms. But you still praised. You still worshipped. You still declared, God is good. And that kind of gratitude, with empty hands and tired bones, is the kind of worship that shifts atmospheres. Heaven saw it. Now it's heaven's turn. You passed the invisible warfare test. They attacked your dreams. They drained your body. They whispered doubts at 3 a.m. hoping you'd break. But you stood. You held the line. And in the unseen realm, you just claimed new territory. Not because you shouted back, but because you didn't move. You passed the delay without detour test. When nothing made sense, you didn't rewrite the vision. You didn't pivot to the easy thing. You stayed anchored, rooted, planted. And now, the release has been triggered. Because the ones who stay faithful with no fruit are the ones God can trust with the full orchard. You passed the secret sowing test. You gave. You helped. You poured out while you were still bleeding, still waiting, still empty. And you never posted it, never bragged, never demanded applause. But the heavens heard the drop of every unseen seed. And now, they're multiplying. You passed the mirror test. When your life didn't look like the prophecy, you still believed the word. When your reflection showed tiredness instead of triumph, you still said, I am chosen. That was the final test. Because only those who believe they're called, when nothing confirms it yet, can carry the weight of manifestation. And now, your activation is complete. Your hands are cleared. Your spirit is aligned. Your test results have been received. Now watch what happens in the natural. Because everything you passed in the unseen is about to pay out in the visible. You thought it was just for you. The house, the breakthrough, the wealth. But in the kingdom, nothing begins personal. It begins prophetic. This is not luxury. This is infrastructure. You are being funded, not for comfort, but for construction. Because the vision you carry isn't small. It's generational. It's global. It's God-sized. And when heaven releases wealth, it never lands randomly. It lands on obedient blueprints. You're not the final destination. You're the pipeline, the bridge between divine vision and earthly manifestation. That's why your hands burn. Not to hold, but to channel. Not to keep, but to release. You're not just being blessed. You're being positioned. Because heaven funds assignment, not ambition. And every sleepless night, every seed sown in silence, every time you said yes when it cost you everything, was heaven testing your alignment. Now it's releasing the confirmation. Money's not late. It was waiting. Waiting for your motives to be purged of ego. Waiting for your soul to stop worshiping results. Waiting for your heart to let go of needing to be seen. Because God will never trust wealth to someone who still uses it to feel important. He doesn't mind you having it. He minds it having you. And now, you've proven something rare. You no longer serve mammon. You serve mission. Wealth is becoming a tool, not a trophy. You don't move to impress. You move to impact. And because of that, provision flows without resistance. The vaults are opening. The assignment has been greenlit. Heaven's approval is showing up in the form of funding. And this money, it's not just for groceries, not just for vacations. It's for warfare. It's to fund projects that terrify the enemy. It's to plant centers, to free addicts, to house the broken, to build things that shift culture. Because your yes became a weapon, and now God's giving you ammunition. Provision isn't just for survival. It's permission. Permission to build. Permission to move. Permission to execute. The confirmation isn't a feeling. It's a deposit. It's what happens when obedience becomes your default currency. You've been asking for money. God's been asking for your yes. And now that you've surrendered fully, not once, but consistently, the vault has recognized your voice. It's not about what you earned. It's about how you aligned. Because the funds were never delayed. They were being guarded for someone who could be trusted to hear God with it. Your breakthrough is unlocking others' deliverance. Your obedience is feeding somebody's children. Your yes is someone's miracle. And heaven knew when to trust your hands. Now, they will carry overflow. Not so you can hoard, but so you can hear when to sow, hear where to give, hear who to lift, hear when to break the alabaster box. You're not just holding wealth, you're holding God's instruction. And that's why your hands are being trusted. This week, every word they spoke against your hands became evidence. Every insult, every hex, every whispered curse, heaven recorded it. And what they meant as accusation became a legal document in the courts of glory. They thought they were blocking you. They were actually witnessing your elevation. You didn't need to fight back, because their very attack became the case file. God used to justify your rise. What was said in secret was heard in the spirit. Because when you're truly chosen, even the curses of your enemies become contracts for your promotion. Demonic attacks are never random. Hell doesn't spend time on people with no spiritual weight. The warfare against your hands was because of what's inside them. What you touch shifts. What you build multiplies. What you carry convicts. That's why they tried to bind you. That's why they cursed your creativity. That's why they targeted your provision. Because your hands are dangerous to darkness. But here's the divine irony. In cursing you, they traced you. In tracing you, they triggered you. And heaven saw it all. The witches who tried to block your wealth, they opened the door to a reverse transfer. What they sent boomeranged. Instead of delay, you got divine release. Instead of depletion, you got download. Instead of poverty, you got prophetic power. They mapped your authority, and in doing so, exposed the path for God to unlock your next level. That was the beginning of the divine backlash. Heaven doesn't just defend. Heaven reverses. So when they tried to bind your hands, they accidentally unshackled your mantle. They cursed you right into your calling, because no curse can override a covenant. And you are a covenant carrier. Their jealousy was loud, but heaven's confirmation was louder. Every false accusation, every attempt to sabotage what your hands were building, it all backfired, because their hatred was actually prophetic announcement. They revealed your appointment without knowing it. They were unwilling prophets, used by God to prove your ranking, to highlight your anointing, to reveal your assignment. And every curse they cast, it left a spiritual fingerprint. And those fingerprints opened your heavenly file. God examined the evidence and ruled in your favor. Restoration, recompense, release, signed and sealed in glory. They sent you into warfare, but you came out as a weapon. You cried, you fasted, you broke, and your hands were forged in the fire. Not weak hands, warrior hands. Hands trained to war and fingers to fight. Because what they meant to bind, heaven meant to burn. And when they touched your hands, they activated heaven's protection clause. Touch not my anointed. That's not just poetry. That's spiritual law. Their curses triggered a holy response. And now, Heaven is retaliating. Through you. Because in trying to curse your touch, they exposed what was lurking in your bloodline. Hidden witchcraft, unseen altars, ancestral strongholds. God said, "Good, now I'll purge it all." They helped reveal the root, and now, fire is cleansing it. Their warfare backfired. Their plot revealed your promise, and what was meant to defile your hands has now made them untouchable. Your touch is now oil-soaked. Your fingers are flame-lit. Your grip holds glory. Healing flows. Breakthrough flows. Justice flows. Your hands are not just hands. They are evidence. They are altars. They are keys. And the next time they try to curse you, they'll realize too late. You've become the consequence. Your hands are not just touching now. They are reaching back into the wounds of your bloodline, back into promises buried beneath pain, back into altars that were never finished, but still burning, waiting for you. Because what you're carrying didn't start with you. There was a woman, generations before you, who wept into a dirt floor, calling on a God she couldn't name, for a child who would break the curse. That child is you. Her tears built the altar. Your fire is the answer. You're not just chosen. You're inheriting a covenant. What your ancestors couldn't complete because of war, witchcraft, betrayal, slavery, silence, is now falling into your hands like divine thunder. The mantle skipped generations, but it didn't disappear. It was hidden, protected, stored in the secret vaults of heaven. And now, the scroll has opened, and your name is glowing on the page. The burning in your hands, that's not just impartation. That's ancient activation. You've awakened something older than your birthday, older than your last name, older than this nation. Something eternal is echoing through your veins. A holy assignment that demons tried to erase, but couldn't. Your family carried a priesthood, a royal line, but it got buried under addiction, chained in poverty, drowned in abuse. Still, the covenant didn't die. It only went quiet. And you, the one they counted out, the one they mocked, the one they said would fall like the rest, you were the one heaven preserved, not just for survival, for fulfillment. Because what God swore to your bloodline, He's now enforcing through your hands. You feel it, don't you? The weight, the fire, the tears you can't explain, the urgency in your spirit that won't let you sleep. That's the sound of convergence. Time, covenant, and anointing, crashing into your body like lightning. You are carrying weapons forged in generations, strategies that came in dreams to those before you, prophetic blueprints that were never built until now. Your hands are justice for every faithful one who died waiting. You are the reversal, the repair, the response. Every affliction that hit your family wasn't random, it was resistance. Because the enemy, Kane, if you ever awakened, everything would change. And now, you've awakened. So your hands carry vengeance in the spirit. Vengeance for the overlooked. Vengeance for the abandoned. Vengeance for the promise stolen. God didn't cancel the covenant. He delayed it for such a time as this. For you. Because now, you're clean enough to hold it. You're mature enough to steward it. You're healed enough to protect it. You're surrendered enough to finish it. This is not just your moment. It's your bloodline's moment. And your hands are the signature of completion. This week, when your hands touch what's coming, they will not just receive. They will redeem. They will reconcile. They will restore. The mantle was never lost. It was simply waiting. For you. Just because it was yours in the spirit didn't mean you could touch it in the natural. You held the title, but not the access. You had the promise, but not the permission. Because heaven doesn't just release based on desire. It releases based on readiness. Some blessings are heavy, and until your soul was trained to carry them with humility, God withheld them to protect you from premature promotion. You thought it was delay, but it was discernment, because heaven guards wealth with gates of wisdom. And now, you've finally crossed the line where access becomes legal. The opposition has been evicted. The blockages in the second heaven are breaking. The warfare that delayed manifestation is now collapsing under divine fire. Because when Michael fights, strongholds fall. And this week, the angelic realm has cleared your path. No more spiritual traffic, no more delay demons. No more monitoring spirits watching your door. God refused to send the blessing. While the counterfeit was still close, the snake had to slither out. The spy had to be exposed. The soul tie had to be severed. Now, the blessing arrives into clean space. Because holiness is the landing strip for heavenly cargo. Every yes you gave, when no one was watching, every time you closed the tab, walked away, turned down the shortcut, those decisions rewrote your destiny. Your private obedience moved the heavenly calendar. You didn't even know it, but timelines shifted because of your yes. The vault is opening, because you proved. You can hold what others would have wasted. This wealth isn't new, it's ancient. It was written before you were born. It's just, now the paperwork is cleared. The court of heaven has ruled in your favor. What was delayed is now scheduled for delivery. And this week, you stepped into the threshold. You crossed into a new realm of time. That's why you feel lighter. That's why your dreams feel sharper. That's why the same atmosphere doesn't feel the same. Because you've passed through the veil. And when heaven aligns your inner world with your outer call, the blessing has no choice but to fall. The angels didn't forget you. They were standing ready, holding your inheritance, waiting for the Father's voice to say, now. And he just said it. That's why this week feels different. Because it is. The generational curse that blocked your family for decades just collapsed. The spiritual resistance you couldn't name just lifted. The heavy fog of confusion just cleared. You weren't disqualified. You were being refined. And now the fire you endured has made your hands strong enough to carry the gold. This is wealth that's not just financial, but generational, spiritual, and eternal. And when it touches down, it won't feel like a gift. It'll feel like recognition, like something returning home, because it was never out there. It was always in your covenant. And this week, heaven just signed the transfer. Wealth is louder than words. And this week, it's going to speak for you or against you, because what enters your hands now isn't just provision. It's proof. Proof of what's really inside. Proof of what poverty never revealed. Lack can hide pride. Lack can disguise idolatry as humility. Lack can make a person look grateful, when really, they're just hungry. But abondance? Abundance tells the truth. What flows into your life this week will expose what your heart has been secretly worshiping. It will reveal whether your motives were pure or patient. Not everyone waits on God because they trust Him. Some wait because they want the payout. And now the test comes. Not the test of receiving, but the test of handling. God's not testing the blessing. He's testing you. Will you bow to the money? Or will the money bow to your mission? This is your X-ray. This is your mirror. This is your confirmation and your confrontation. Because the Spirit is saying, what you do with this will either elevate you or expose you. So don't confuse clean hands with a clean resume. God's not asking for perfection. He's asking for purification. Surrendered hands. Kingdom-aligned hands. Hands that would rather release the blessing than recycle it into ego. Because what you received this week wasn't meant to sit, it was meant to circulate. Toplis. To break chains. To build something eternal. And that's why it's dangerous. Because money is magnification. If your heart is healthy, wealth will amplify your obedience. If your soul is fractured, wealth will spotlight your wounds. And the enemy knows this. That's why some people fumble right after they're favored. Because they thought the blessing was a trophy. When really, it was a tool. This is your first drop. Your first sign. Your first seed. And how you treat the seed will determine if you're trusted with the flood. God is watching. Not just what you say, but what your hands do. Will you post it, or will you plant it? Will you spend it to flex, or sow it to set captives free? Because this is the sermon your life is preaching now. Not with your mouth, but with your stewardship. And this week's wealth isn't a finish line. It's a fire that will either burn pride off your altar, or burn your altar down. So don't reach for the bag, unless your soul is ready to carry the weight. Clean hands carry glory. Clean hands carry power. Clean hands carry holy fire. But if your motives are mixed, that same fire can consume you. This is your warning. This is your wake-up. This is your window. How you move this week will shape what heaven releases next. Because the true wealth was never about the money. It was about whether your soul could hold the mantle. Chosen one, your hands will touch new wealth this week.